The world thought the Meghan Markle drama had cooled down, but behind palace walls and inside media boardrooms, something explosive was quietly happening. The man they mocked, canceled, and pushed out of British television is suddenly looking terrifyingly correct. And now, as Meghan's public image starts cracking under the weight of her own contradictions, people are asking the question nobody wanted to ask 5 years ago: what if Piers Morgan saw the entire collapse coming before everyone else did? Because this is no longer about gossip. It is about patterns, repeated patterns, public contradictions, relationships disintegrating, celebrity support evaporating, and one very uncomfortable reality forming right in front of millions of people in real time. Piers Morgan lost one of the biggest television jobs in Britain because he refused to back down from his opinion about Meghan Markle after the Oprah interview. At the time, the backlash was nuclear. Thousands of complaints, furious headlines, public outrage. But now, the same people who once called him cruel are quietly rewatching his old clips with a completely different expression on their faces. Because the things he warned about are no longer theories. They are unfolding publicly week after week in ways nobody can ignore anymore. And it all exploded again when Meghan posted that cryptic message about surviving the hardest 7 years of her life. 7 years. Think about that number carefully. Count backward. That takes the timeline directly to 2018, the year she married Prince Harry, entered the royal family, stepped into global fame, royal privilege, luxury, power, titles, security, worldwide attention. But only weeks earlier, Meghan had already sat in a carefully staged emotional interview telling the world she was happier than she had ever been. Happiest life, loving husband, beautiful children, peaceful California existence. She practically painted her life like a dream sequence. Then suddenly, only days later, she hints those same 7 years were unbearable suffering. And the internet froze, because both stories cannot live together without one of them collapsing. That is exactly where Piers Morgan always attacked the narrative. Not emotionally, logically. He kept asking the same brutal question over and over again: which Meghan are we supposed to believe? The joyful California Duchess? Or the emotionally destroyed survivor trapped in misery for 7 years? The contradictions are becoming impossible to hide now, and audiences are noticing it faster than her own team can control it. Then came the Serena Williams disaster. And honestly, this was supposed to be Meghan's triumphant luxury comeback moment. Her glamorous lifestyle empire, expensive candles, premium chocolates, elegant branding, celebrity endorsement from one of the most famous athletes on earth. The perfect rollout, except it turned into social media humiliation within hours. Serena opened the luxury package on camera and the chocolates looked smashed, crushed together, melted into a mess. Her face said everything before her mouth even moved. Then the candle descriptions arrived, and Serena could barely pronounce the ingredients while awkwardly forcing smiles into the camera. The clip spread across the internet instantly because it felt uncomfortable to watch. Not polished, not aspirational, not luxurious. Forced, like even Meghan's own closest celebrity allies were struggling to sell the fantasy anymore. Piers Morgan immediately jumped on it, saying if your biggest supporter cannot convincingly promote your products, your brand is already in trouble. And the worst part? Reports started piling up about candles arriving without wicks, labels peeling off jars, clothing sales barely moving. For someone attached to Netflix millions, Spotify millions, royal branding, global fame, Hollywood access, the actual business reality suddenly looked shockingly weak. But things became even darker when Harry stepped into geopolitics with the Ukraine speech. This was not some harmless celebrity appearance. This was Prince Harry publicly speaking on international conflict while no longer being a working royal, no longer representing Britain officially, no longer carrying institutional authority. Yet he still carried the royal identity into one of the most politically sensitive situations possible. And timing made everything worse. King Charles was preparing for major diplomatic engagements involving the United States, while Harry's comments created unwanted political noise only days beforehand. Palace insiders reportedly saw it as reckless. Piers Morgan called it freelancing with a royal title after abandoning the responsibilities attached to it. That criticism hit hard because it exposed something deeper people are beginning to notice. Harry and Meghan seem unable to fully leave the monarchy behind while simultaneously attacking it publicly whenever convenient. And then came one of the coldest moments of the entire royal saga. During a major speech in America, King Charles publicly referenced cities connected to royal family history. He mentioned William. He referenced other royal names. But Harry? Complete silence. Nothing, not even a symbolic mention. On one of the most visible stages of his reign, the king's omission landed louder than any public statement could have. Piers Morgan immediately described it as deliberate, calculated, a signal, because royal families do not accidentally forget names during carefully scripted speeches watched around the world. And suddenly, conversations started growing louder about whether Harry could eventually face deeper institutional separation, similar to what happened with Prince Andrew. Once that conversation enters public air, it changes everything, because it means the palace is no longer simply dealing with embarrassing interviews. It is potentially preparing for permanent consequences. Meanwhile, another pattern keeps haunting Meghan's image: people disappearing from her life, family cut off, friends vanished, palace staff departures, former aides speaking through documented complaints. The bullying allegations that Kensington Palace investigated never truly disappeared from public memory. That inquiry still hangs over everything like unfinished business. And Piers Morgan has consistently argued that the most revealing thing about Meghan is not what supporters say about her publicly, but how many relationships collapse behind the scenes. Staff leaving, advisors cycling out, public friendships cooling off, even powerful PR professionals reportedly struggling to stay long-term inside the Sussex operation. The pattern keeps repeating itself so often that critics no longer see it as coincidence. What makes this entire situation feel even more dangerous for Meghan and Harry is that the pressure is no longer coming from random tabloid headlines alone. It is coming from official courtrooms, public speeches, documented investigations, financial analysts, and even silence from the very celebrity circles that once treated them like untouchable royalty. That is why Piers Morgan suddenly looks less like an angry critic and more like someone who understood the direction of the collapse before anybody else dared to say it publicly. And nowhere is that becoming clearer than the visa controversy hanging over Prince Harry like a ticking clock. For years, critics mocked the story as political noise, but then the court filings started appearing. Federal judges, Homeland Security arguments, immigration records, public admissions from Harry's own memoir about drug use. Suddenly, this was no longer gossip territory. This became a legal conversation. The Heritage Foundation pushed aggressively for transparency, arguing that ordinary visa applicants face serious consequences if they hide past drug use on immigration forms. Piers Morgan repeatedly called this the quiet danger because, unlike viral social media embarrassment, legal pressure does not disappear after a bad news cycle. It keeps moving slowly, relentlessly. And the terrifying part for the Sussex camp is that the story is still alive. The released documents were heavily redacted. The full application has not been publicly seen. Questions remain unanswered. That uncertainty itself keeps the controversy burning. And every time the case resurfaces, it drags Harry's image back into another round of global scrutiny, just as the couple tries to reposition themselves commercially. But money may be the most brutal reality closing in around them. For years, Harry and Meghan looked unstoppable financially. Netflix millions, Spotify millions, book deals, speaking deals, mansion in Montecito, celebrity friends, security teams. The image projected to the public was enormous wealth mixed with moral superiority. But behind the polished image, cracks have reportedly started appearing everywhere. Sources close to financial reporting around the Sussex operation now openly discuss a shrinking runway. And that is what makes people nervous, because maintaining the image of global royal celebrity costs staggering amounts of money. Montecito itself is not just expensive, it is a world built around visible status. People there notice everything. They notice who renovates, who upgrades, who spends freely, who quietly stops. And reports claiming Harry and Meghan never fully modernized their mansion became symbolic of something much larger. A signal that the unstoppable California empire may not actually be as financially secure as it once appeared. Piers Morgan always insisted the real ending of this story would not come through interviews or emotional speeches. It would come when the business model stopped working. And now, audiences are beginning to notice how many projects launch with massive publicity only to fade unusually fast afterward. Spotify ended abruptly. Netflix changed direction. Product launches generated ridicule instead of demand. Even celebrity endorsements increasingly feel forced instead of organic. The magic around the Sussex brand that once terrified palace officials seems seems to be evaporating in public view. And then there is the bullying investigation. The story Meghan supporters desperately hoped would disappear forever. But it never fully disappeared because Kensington Palace itself formally acknowledged it. That fact alone continues haunting the entire narrative. Royal institutions are obsessed with avoiding public scandal. They protect the monarchy aggressively. So when the palace publicly confirmed an investigation into staff complaints, people immediately understood how serious the situation must have become internally. Multiple staff departures, emails from senior aides, formal concerns placed into writing. Even though the full findings were never publicly released, the shadow of that inquiry never stopped following Meghan. Piers Morgan used that point relentlessly because it gave institutional weight to concerns that critics had previously dismissed as gossip. And over time, the public started connecting the dots themselves. The staff exits, the friendship breakdowns, the family separations, the endless turnover around the Sussex operation. But the single most devastating part of this entire saga remains the Oprah aftermath, because that was the moment the world emotionally chose sides. Meghan and Harry presented themselves as emotionally shattered survivors trapped inside a cold institution. Millions believed them instantly. Piers Morgan became one of the only major public figures who openly refused to accept the narrative at face value, and he paid an enormous professional price for it. But 5 years later, something extraordinary has happened. The audience itself has started questioning the contradictions that once passed unquestioned. Every new interview, every emotional statement, every rebranding attempt now gets compared against older statements. People are noticing inconsistencies faster than before. Trust is becoming harder to rebuild, and maybe that is the real reason this story feels unfinished. Because the palace war was never truly about race, titles, interviews, or media outrage alone. It was about credibility. Who keeps it? Who loses it? And once public trust starts slipping away, it becomes almost impossible to reverse completely. The royal family understood that long before Harry and Meghan left Britain. Piers Morgan understood it when he risked his career saying he did not believe the narrative. And now, slowly, painfully, publicly, the wider world is beginning to understand it too.